Good day, and welcome to Hiroshima University's English Podcast.
Joe, why are we walking through the cemetery late at night?
I know it's dark, Kay. Very dark. But, as I told you, this is a shortcut to our podcast recording studio.
But it's scary. There are ohaka, tombstones everywhere and spider webs. Hey, what's that?
It's only a dog, Kay. Let's go.
No, I mean that.
What?
That I...
Kay, what kind of grammar is that? That I? You know every sentence must have a noun and a verb and...
No, I mean I sing an I, like the eye of a head. E-Y-E.
Oh, that I.
But the problem is, there is only one eye.
What? You see an eye?
Yeah.
Oh, I see it too. Don't worry, Kay. I'll protect you. I'll kill it.
Be careful, Joe. Joe? Joe? Where are you? Hey, why is the eye coming closer to me? Ah! Hi everyone. Thanks for coming to our exciting new drama.
Yeah, somehow we survived the cemetery again.
But that sure is a scary shortcut that we take to get to our podcast studio. Joe. Hey Joe, why was there an eye in the cemetery this time?
The eye, as in the eye of a head, plays an important role in our drama this time, Kay. And so does a heart.
A beating heart and a single eye? Oh, sounds frightening.
Yes, today, Hiroshima University's English podcast is proud to present Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
Edgar Allan Poe, I've heard of him. He wrote scary things, right?
Yes, we have a frightening story to end this summer.
Joe, can you tell us a little about Edgar Allan Poe?
Sure, Kay. Poe was an American writer about 200 years ago.
Oh, a long time ago. Does that mean the story contains Old English?
Actually, no, Kay. Edgar Allan Poe used mostly simple, easy-to-understand words which are still used in modern English today. So, even American junior high students can understand it relatively easily.
So, who was Edgar Allan Poe?
Poe had a very interesting and difficult life, Kay. He was born in 1809 in Boston on the American East Coast. He was the second of 3 children by 2 actors.
Oh, both of his parents were actors? 200 years ago, people could make money acting?
Of course, not TV or movie actors, but they performed in plays, including Shakespeare plays.
Wow. I guess that fact contributed to Poe being creative?
Yeah, maybe creativity was in the genes. But unfortunately, the father quickly left the family, and the mother died the next year when Poe was only 2.
Ow, he had no parents at the age of 2? Oh dear. How did he survive? And you say he was the second of the 3 little children?
Yes, the 3 kids were split up. The older brother grew up with some relatives, but Edgar and his younger sister were taken in by different families in Virginia.
Virginia? That's near Washington, D.C., farther south?
Yes. Luckily, the family which volunteered to take care of Edgar was a relatively successful business family. selling a variety of goods. Their name was the Allens.
Oh, Edgar Allan Poe. So that's how he got his name.
Yes. So he grew up in a foster family.
That's a 里子の家族, a foster family.
Right. The father took the family to Scotland and London, where Poe lived for a few years, and they moved back to the U.S. when Poe was 11 years old.
Oh, he went abroad at a young age. Maybe that had a good influence on him?
I guess so. Back in the U.S., Poe went to the University of Virginia, but he quit because he didn't have enough money. He gambled and lost a lot of his money, so the foster father became angry and didn't give him more.
Oh, gambling. Not good.
And then he also might have quit the university because his girlfriend married a different guy.
Gambling and girls, a wild life.
Yep. And the army, Kay. To get money, he joined the army for a few years. But he wasn't in any wars, and he didn't like the work, so he quit after a few years. He wanted to be a professional writer.
So he began serious writing in his early 20s?
Yeah. He was one of the first Americans who tried to survive only by writing, and it was not easy. A big problem in those days, Kay, was that there were no international copyright laws.
著作権.
Yeah, there were no international copyright laws, so most American publishers preferred to steal British writings, such as Shakespeare, rather than pay for new writings by local Americans.
Oh dear.
So Poe was very poor. He managed to survive by writing for local magazines and newspapers.
Ow, but very poor.
Yeah. Then, at the age of 26, he married his 13-year-old cousin named Virginia Clem.
Oh, Virginia, the same name as the state? Wait, but you said his wife was only 13 years old?
Yeah, people sometimes got married young in those days.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, Virginia died 11 years later at the age of 24 because of tuberculosis.
結核, tuberculosis. A lot of people all over the world got it in the 19th century.
Yeah, his wife's death really affected Edgar. They never had any children, but he was really saddened by her death.
Too bad. Joe, I seem to see a pattern here. He had a lot of troubles involving women. First, his mother died, then he lost his girlfriend, and then his wife died.
Yes, Kay, this theme of death of a beautiful woman was very important in his writings.
Oh, the death of beautiful women?
3 years after Virginia's death, in 1845, at the age of 36, Poe published one of his most famous poems called The Raven. It made him super famous.
Oh, the raven. In Japanese, that's 大ガラス.
Yes, we'll talk about The Raven and his other writings on our podcast next month, Kay. But just to finish up our story here about his life, Edgar Allan Poe died just a couple of years later at the age of 40.
He died so young. Why?
The reason for his death is not so clear, but alcoholism probably was a major problem.
Oh, alcoholism.
And epilepsy,
転換,
syphilis,
梅毒,
cholera,
コレラ,
and rabies.
狂犬病.
All of these might have caused his death, Kay. Alcoholism, epilepsy, syphilis, cholera, and rabies.
Oh, those are hard words. But it sounds like a very hard way to die.
Yes, at the age of 40.
So, Joe, it's time to get into our story today, The Telltale Heart. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. This was published in 1843 near the end of the Edo period, when Poe was 34 years old. A man tells the story about himself, how he killed an old man.
Oh, so it's a story about a murder told by the bad guy himself?
Right. But the bad guy wants the readers of the story
And the listeners of our podcast.
to believe that he is not crazy.
彼は正当だと説明しています。
Right. He tries to justify the murder. The victim is an old man with a vulture's eye, as the man calls it.
ハゲワシの目。ハゲワシは死肉を主食としている鳥ですね。見た目が怖いです。
In part 1 today, the killer tells how he carefully, skillfully planned the murder.
Unfortunately, on this recording, we cannot explain all the vocabulary.
That's right. But if you study the vocabulary list and the script, we're sure that you can learn the words and understand everything.
And with that, let's listen to part 1 of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, Part 1. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but, once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed. Closed so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just after midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. And for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So, you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened, through fear of robbers. And so, I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still, and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no! It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it was welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor," or, "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time very patiently without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it, you cannot imagine how stealthily until, at length, a single dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot out from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it, that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely upon the damned spot.
So, Joe, 彼は老人をまだ殺していません。He still hasn't killed the old guy.
That's right. In part 2, he will actually commit the murder.
Ah.
Today, the man told us that he is not mad and that he is very cunning.
Can he escape from the police?
Let's find out next month.
Have fun studying English, everyone, and we will see you at Hiroshima University's English podcast.
Bye.
Bye.